Thanks for listening to the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry, here to help educate, motivate, and put you on the right path to take control of your health through weekly discussions on topics in the medical field, public health arena, and in your community. And now your host, Dr. Barry.
Welcome to the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry. This is episode 36, and like always, if you want my show notes to the episode, please go to drpierresblog.com/LLP036. Again, if you want today's show notes, please go to drpierresblog.com/LLP036, which we're going to be talking about hurricanes and healthcare workers, a very nice, aptly titled episode based on some of our current events. But you're also going to get links to pretty much everywhere you can find a podcast. Again, if you are an Apple user, you'll find the link to the Apple Podcast link for this show. Again, but if maybe you want to use it on Google Play, maybe you want to use it on Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, SoundCloud, you'll see the links of all of the episodes on that page. And you'll also find links to my Facebook page at facebook.com/LunchLearnPod, as well as the Instagram page at LunchLearnPod as well. And again, the Twitter page at LunchLearnPod. So just keeping up with the theme. If you want the episodes, you go to drpierresblog.com/LLP036. If you want access to either the Apple Podcast episode, the Google Play, Stitcher Radio, you'll see all of those links there in the show notes. So today we have an episode for you where we're going to be talking about hurricanes and healthcare workers. And I thought this was an aptly titled episode, especially based off some of the current events that have been going on. For those who've been rocking with me from the beginning, you know I am from South Florida, and you know we're not a stranger to hurricanes, and we're just coming off most recent one, Hurricane Irma. And, you know, I thought it was very telling, you know, some of the conclusions and drawbacks of how healthcare workers, you look at potential natural disasters versus kind of the general public. So sit back and stay tuned and, you know, get ready for another great episode. And hopefully we learn a thing or two just about how, you know, we in the healthcare system deal with these hurricanes and just really any natural disaster, especially those who happen to work in the hospital. So sit back and get ready for another great episode. All right. So as I record this episode, Hurricane Irma is leaving the state of Florida, and I sit in my house with no access to the internet. I sit in my house with no access to any cable or satellite TV, but I can tell you, you know, it's God's will and graces that there's no damage, right? There's no property, you know, I got a couple of trees that fell down, but no property damage, no busted windows, and I could say I'm blessed, right? And I know that's not the same for everybody, right? So, you know, I am truly blessed, you know, that I was able to, you know, kind of leave unscathed with this most recent Hurricane Irma, for those who may have not kind of maybe sped through the intro. And I want to talk about Hurricane Irma and really just natural disasters in general, because it was very interesting to me over this past week or so when it was, you know, pretty telling that, you know, we were going to get hit with the hurricane in one way, shape, or form. Fortunately for, I guess, the southeastern part of Florida, we didn't get hit with the brunt of the hurricane as was expected. It actually ended up going west, but we still got hit because it was a big enough hurricane. But I thought it was very telling, you know, when my friends would ask me, family members would ask me, hey, when are you guys leaving? When are you guys leaving? And like, I would have to laugh at them and say, well, I don't plan on leaving, right? Because honestly, I never had any intention to leave. Two, I work in a hospital, right? And I'm not sure if people realize that most of your hospital workers don't really go anywhere for these natural disasters, right? Why? Because their jobs usually require them to be at the hospital or to be working or to be close in that vicinity. So I definitely thought it was pretty funny, right? When, you know, they would always ask me and I would give them that answer, and they would almost look at me with kind of the stark look like, oh my God, What do you mean you're not going anywhere? Because again, for most people, when, danger is impending, right, they tend to run away. But what tends to happen, especially in the healthcare system, when we talk about, especially those in the healthcare system, when we talk about code blues and we talk about, code reds and stroke alerts, we go towards the problem, right? Like we go towards the fire where most people kind of run away from it. And I think that was pretty much, again, right on par when we talk about this hurricane. So I definitely wanted to kind of talk about it and, for one, acknowledge, the heroes of the hurricane relief and everything kind of under the sun in that regards. And then kind of really talk about, as a healthcare worker, what these natural disasters mean to us and what tends to preoccupy our minds rather than, the general public. With usually the general public is saying, hey, when can I get out of here and how soon can I get out of here? So I wanted to first start off in acknowledging, for those who may not know or maybe been under the rock, that I'm actually a program director of an internal medicine program at Wellington Regional Hospital. And I wanted to kind of acknowledge all of my residents, right? I wanted to acknowledge my residents of the hospital because honestly and truly, I'm not even gloating, even though for those who know me, I like to gloat. That hospital, would not have survived, right, if not for these residents, right? And we usually split them up into teams. Those who are a part of residencies across the country know exactly what I'm talking about. We're usually splitting up into teams, right? Especially when we talk about these impending natural disasters that are on their way, where one team is usually the one who kind of takes care of the hospital system and holds the fort down, while the, impending disaster, hurricane, tornado, whatever it is on its way. Where we have Team B who's coming in and who kind of relieves Team A, kind of helps clean up any messes that may be left behind, and also is, ready to take a lot of that, post-disaster help that tends to rush into these hospitals, right? So I definitely want to give a shout out to all of my residents, my internal medicine residents at Wellington Regional Hospital for such an amazing job. Because it's tough, right? Because it's tough when we talk about, leaving loved ones, right? Because some of them did, right? Some of them had to leave their loved ones at home or send their loved ones away while they had to take care of someone else's loved ones. Because we have to remember, again, when we're in the hospital setting, right, we're taking care of someone's grandma, someone's grandpa, someone's mom, someone's dad, someone's brother, someone's sister, right? And sometimes that can get kind of lost, especially as a healthcare professional, when you kind of forget that, this isn't just, a person in front of you, right? You're taking care of someone's family member who may be distant, who may not be there, but who cares for them deeply. So I definitely wanted to kind of start out with the podcast, kind of acknowledging them. And, that's something we'll probably do throughout the year, just, in acknowledging, individual, members of my resident class, because, those guys and gals are absolutely amazing. And I can tell you again, the Team A did a phenomenal job, with the hospitals and holding down the fort, because for, what a lot of people don't understand, if not for those residents, right, some of the primary cares who happen to see patients in a hospital, they were gone, right? They weren't there to see their patients throughout the storm, right? It was my residents, right? So definitely want to give a shout out to those residents. You guys were amazing, and appreciate. And I can tell you from an administrative standpoint, and even from a patient standpoint, you guys' selflessness is definitely not overlooked in that regards, right? So again, we talked about the Team A, we talked about the Team B, and what it's like. I was actually on Team B, right? So I'm actually a part of the team who kind of takes over for Team A, gives Team A that rest. Because again, these guys, they were in the hospital from Friday. And during these natural disasters, especially hurricanes here in South Florida, the hospitals actually go on lockdown, right? And the reason why they do that is because they don't want, first of all, they don't want anyone leaving the hospital in an unsafe condition, but they don't want anyone also coming to the hospital in an unsafe condition as well, too, right? And for those, if you're not aware, most of your emergency medical transportation cars don't run for those who are not aware, most of your emergency medical cars, your ambulances and everything aren't running, during a hurricane, right? Because, again, we can't put those people in danger, during these natural disasters, right? So most of your hospitals just end up closing up and, saying, hey, we've got everyone we need to stay here. We're going to keep them here, and we don't want anyone from the outside coming in, right? Because, again, we don't want to endanger anyone in the process. So I'm coming in. I'm with the cleanup crew that, even though these guys have stayed since Friday, stayed in the hospital, stayed under lockdown, and done such an amazing job. Here Team B comes in and kind of helps, clean them up, helps, give them a well-deserved rest that they need. Because, again, these guys and gals have been away from their family members and, have been away from their own homes during this time. So we were able to kind of relieve them of their duties in that regards. And then we kind of take over what a lot of people kind of recognize as like the second wave, because what tends to happen during these natural disasters, these hurricanes, these floodings and everything kind of under the sun is during when all of this is happening, people are getting sick. For those who may have seen some of the video and some of the photos from the hurricane that happened in Houston, you may have seen this one photo of a nursing home that was flooded, and you've seen about 6 to 8 old ladies in the nursing home. So what tends to happen again, so things like that happen during the natural disaster, and those types of patients have to be taken care of afterwards. So it was, so again, that's where Team B comes in, right? Because Team B comes in and is bracing the ER, because the ERs everywhere are going to be packed, right, of people who need to be seen in the ER and who couldn't because the hurricane was around. And, we kind of help, alleviate a lot of that stress from our emergency room and taking care of those patients in that regards. I think I would be, disingenuous, right, if I didn't acknowledge that it wasn't just doctors in the hospitals, right? It was the nurses, it was, the CNAs, the environmental service workers, it was the cafeteria workers, it was those in information technology, everybody from, top to bottom. Administrators were even in the hospital, right? So everyone from top to bottom was there pitching in, and making sure that hospital is still running, despite all that was happening around it, right? Despite power going off around it, despite cell services going off around it, right? Despite little old me having to deal with the fact that, my cable isn't working anymore, right? Those hospitals were still there and, putting up such a great job, right? So I definitely want to make sure everyone gets acknowledged, right? Of course, I'm biased. I'm always going to make sure, my doctors are taken care of and my doctors get a shout out, and especially my resident physicians who sometimes, always get like the wrong end of the stick. Everyone always blames the residents for one thing or the other. But again, I could tell you with no understatement, that hospital was 100% ran by the residents, and, it wouldn't have done so without it. So, definitely shout out the residents and the physicians, but just making sure we do acknowledge, this is a team effort, right? Without my unit secretaries, without my operators, my IT folks, my CNAs, my environmental service workers, without my cafeteria folks, right? Again, we got to eat. And those, I love to eat, right? So if we don't even got someone who's going to help cook the food for us, we're going to have some problems, right? So again, making sure we acknowledge everyone from, A to Z is very important for me. And that's why I wanted to kind of make sure, I did this podcast, because I definitely wanted to make sure everybody got that shout out, because they definitely need it, because I think what happened, especially what's been happening, because I think what's been happening in healthcare, very lately, but, it's been going on for quite some time now, right, is there's a respect factor that just isn't being met anymore in the healthcare world, right? There's a level of care, that you're not seeing pretty much from both sides of the coin. But, in a profession where being selfless is such a trait, that's becoming more rare and rare as, things is going, and, as all of these programs and stipulations, are placed upon it, are sometimes to the detriment of the patient. Being able to see and know that, we have people in such a selfless position, ready to take care of your mom, your dad, your grandpa, your granddaughter, knowing that, their family members are outside and, may not even be able to contact them, right? It's such an amazing feat, right? And it's one of the reasons why I ended up going into medicine in the first place. Because when I realized I was on Team B, one of my first things I was concerned about is, well, how about my patients, right? Because again, I don't think that's something that we can ever turn off. And it was something, even as when I was an outpatient physician, I remember, I think it was Hurricane Matthew who was here maybe a year or so ago. And it was a hurricane that didn't hit us, but I remember being in the outpatient world where, again, I wasn't required to stay in the hospital. So, I wasn't in town. But, being on an inpatient sector and understanding that, your patients are depending on you and depending on making sure they have adequate follow-up and someone's seeing and someone's taking care of them, despite your presence not being there, is something that is absolutely amazing to me, right? And, that's why I love medicine, and that's why I think we do what we do for the most part, right? Because we absolutely love it. Because in this day and age, right, where we know the finances, right? Because, again, for those who know me, you understand that I never shy away from finances. I understand that, finances are what make the world go round. I understand that money is not evil. I understand that it's okay to like money. It's okay to want money. It's okay to want a lot of money, right? That's not a bad thing. And even in medicine, right, where you want to be selfless and you want to care for your patient, right, it's okay to think about the money. It's okay. Again, I'll probably have a whole podcast or blog about that, just to talk about, hey, we got to stop acting like we don't like money, because sometimes we do. But in a time like this where, everything is kind of being put back on, the healthcare system in a negative light, where, doctors, aren't getting the respect that they used to get, and, they aren't being seen as the experts in their field anymore. And, everything they do seems to get nitpicked for one way, shape, or form. And the stories like these, where seeing people being able to, put, their families and, their livelihoods or their homes or personal properties and put them on the back burner, understanding that it's without them, someone else may have an unfavorable result in the hospital, is just absolutely admirable, right? And I want you guys, especially when, especially if you know anyone who works in a hospital or anyone who had to do one of those shifts that I talked about, where they were in the Team A, where they were going in, during the storm, getting ready for it, but also taking care of every single patient, in that hospital, or whether they're Team B and they're ready to help clean up, they're ready to help give Team A a break, and they're ready to help deal with everything that happens after the natural disasters. Right? I want you to kind of, give a shout out, tell them that you appreciate them, tell them that, you're glad that they do what they do, because again, sometimes we don't get enough of it, right? I am very fortunate enough that with all the stuff I do, from this podcast, from the blogs, and from the videos, that I usually, me receiving acknowledgement for what I do doesn't, I'm not short of that, right? Because I give enough people enough opportunity, enough material that they can always acknowledge that, hey, you know what, I appreciate what you do. But for, let's say you're talking about one of my physician friends who, may not, be as, socially active, right? Who may just kind of, do their, their 12-hour shift and they're gone, or their 9 to 7 shift and they're gone, or their 9 to 5 shift and they're gone home, and who may not be as plugged in as I, especially in the social media world. And what I want you to do is, check out drpierresblog.com for a article where I talk about, if your doctor's not on social media, go ahead and run. I wanted you to check that out because, again, I think that's something that's very telling, right? But again, if they're not, right, I definitely wanted to make sure we're acknowledging them and making sure, we're giving them the respect that's, just aptly due, right? Because it's without, and I could tell you that it's without any, shadow of a doubt, right, that if you put these people in the same situation 100 times, they would choose the same result 100 times all over again, right? Because the love for the patient is always so great. That, sometimes even when our family members are, getting on us a little bit about, trying to be a little bit more selfish, that's just something that we kind of like ignore and we got to put in the back burner. I can tell you, my wife, argues with me all the time, right? She's always arguing with me because she knows that I'm sometimes so gung-ho for my patient. She thinks I shouldn't be, right? And I think when we love what we do, right? When we don't consider what we do like a quote unquote job, like sometimes I've said this all the time, right? Like I can't believe, right? They're paying me to do what I have always wanted to do, right? Since I was watching Doogie House, I've always wanted to be a physician, right? I've always wanted to take care of people. And somehow, some way, I've got it to the point where someone's going to pay me to do so. And I'm ecstatic, right? I'm not gonna tell them to stop paying me. I got a lot of loans, right? So I got a lot of loans. I got to pay those loans off. So I definitely enjoy them paying me. But again, it's something that, I don't take for granted. And I don't want, you guys out there who are able to, just pick up and evacuate, right? Or go to a shelter, right? Or say, you know what, I don't want to deal with this, natural disaster, right? I want to get it far away from it as possible, right? If you're in that position, right, I want you to kind of think about, your first responders, your doctors, your nurses, your ITs, your environmental services, your CNAs, your cooks. Like, I want you to think about everyone who's in those facilities, who stay in those facilities, because they understand that there is no option for leaving, right? Their only option is, how can I take care of everyone who can't leave? How can I take care of everyone who don't have the opportunity to go? And that's my soapbox for today. So again, I appreciate, all of my workers, but again, especially my residents across the country. Especially I have friends and family members who are residents, and my cardiologist friend at Broward General, my family medicine resident friend at Broward General, and pretty much all across the board. A friend of mine at JFK Hospital, an internist, she had to stay. She was a team mayor. Shout out. I'm not gonna shout out their government names because I don't want them to get mad at me, but if you're listening to it, you know who you are. Shout out to them, right? Because shout out to people like them who always put the patient first, above their own sometimes, right? And that's kind of where we're at here. So I'm gonna see you guys next week for another great episode. And like always, go ahead, share this episode. Tell me what you liked about the episode. And, you're always going to keep hearing more from me because, that's what we're here to do. Talk to you guys later. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Lunch and Learn with Dr. Barry. I want to say thanks again for all that you guys do and all of your support and all of your listens. So I want you to kind of keep on keeping on with going ahead and sharing today's episode. Go ahead and subscribe to the podcast if you're not already subscribed to the podcast. Follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at the same name, Lunch Learn Pod. And go to the website again, lunchlearnpod.com, for all of the episodes if you've missed one. And again, I'm at all of the favorite podcast apps: Google Play, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and of course, Apple Podcasts, where I would love a 5-star review. And tell me what you think about today's episode. I would love to hear it. So I'll see you guys next week. Bye.